Well, it's been good to join with you tonight already and also this morning and think through a few things and continue on what we've been talking about over the last number of weeks through the Gospel of Luke. Let me ask, who likes a good plot twist? Do you like a good plot twist in a movie? I like a good plot twist. You like a good plot twist? I love a good plot twist. What I don't like is being told that there's going to be a plot twist. That's one of the things I like the least. I really don't like it if someone tells me what the plot... someone says, oh, you've got to see this movie. It's a movie where you go, oh, no, don't tell me anything. But I don't even like it when someone tells me that there just is a plot twist. Like, this is a great movie, you should see it, and there's a plot twist at the end. I won't tell you anything, but... No, don't tell me that. So, that's where the whole spoilers things comes from, right? Can you think of an iconic plot twist? Don't do it in a recent movie, otherwise you might be accused of the same thing I've just been saying. So no spoilers of recent movies or stories. Iconic plot twists. Can you think of any? Oh, see, when you're asked to think of one, it's hard to think of it, isn't it? Here's one. Put it up on the screen there. This plot twist, right? This is a plot twist. Well, I've got to say, it's only a plot twist if you're as old as me and you saw the movies in the original order of release, when movie number 4 was actually movie number 1. And so you didn't know until this point in Empire Strikes Back that when Darth says those famous words, Luke, I am your father. And he goes, no. Now, of course, if you missed that, by the way, you missed everything to do with Star Wars. This plot twist, as many plot twists do, tie the whole thing together. And if you were out at the toilet at this part in the movie, you just would have no idea what's going on for that whole section, right? But this is a big plot twist. Here's another plot twist, and this reveals my sort of favourite genres of... You get this plot twist? Severus Snape takes the wand and actually kills Dumbledore. I remember when these books were out and I was reading through that book and I hadn't got to the end yet. I was going on a train into town, looking out the window. I wasn't actually reading my book at the time. I was looking out the window at all the graffiti sprayed on all the rocks outside, and there, as I'm going past, says, Dumbledore dies. Going, man, that was the worst spoiler ever. I did not enjoy that one. But again... Reading... Oh. I thought you were mid-train. Oh, right, reading it. No, I actually saw it. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, those sorts of things. Plot twists are really, in stories and in movies, are the fulcrum around which a story hinges. You miss it, you don't understand what's going on, but it's that surprising left of centre thing that just incredibly was unexpected but really important. You've got to pay attention to plot twists. 2020... There's a bit of a plot twist, right? I know that I was talking to Bailey and she said, remember when we went on Europe and things went wrong and then we just went, plot twist, that was our excuse. Do you remember that, Lockie? Do you remember that? We got lost in Pompeii because we got off at the wrong train station. Plot twist, right? But 2020 was a big plot twist. Who would have thought before January that there would have been the fires and the trauma associated with that, and then, of course, the pandemic and all the uncertainty wrapped up in what that is all about, and then the international anxiety of what's been going on, the racial unrest, the American politics, all of that sort of stuff has been anxiety producing, and it was something that we were not expecting. I went to work on Wednesday morning. I got an unexpected text from Gemma at that point that said, I think Greg Smith has died. Now, Greg is her immediate boss and someone who we knew from way back when we were at Nawi, and we were a lot younger, and Greg was in the young adults group there. And Greg had actually, if you've heard, and many of you would have heard, that he, on Tuesday night, had been playing indoor soccer and just collapsed and was gone. Couldn't be revived. Completely gone. That's not to be disrespectful, but that's a plot twist, right? The unexpected shock and everything changes. But you can't ignore these things, right? Things are happening here that you can't just wish them away. We're looking at the end of the life of Jesus. And we're looking at something that is really familiar in Luke chapter 22 or aroundabouts there. Like really familiar with us. We know what's going on. There are no surprising plot twists for us only because it's all spoilers. Because we've been leaning into it for any time you've been at church, every Easter at least, we delve into this story, and for good reason, but there are no surprises left. And so, familiarity can breed contempt or at least complacency. So when we get into this today, I want us to try to engage with the story as if this is the first time you've heard it. Because there are some really significant plot twists in the narrative of what's going on with Jesus. And if you miss these plot twists, you miss what's actually going on, the real significance of it, not only for Jesus, but also for us. So you can have a look if you want to now, or you can read Luke 22:66 to 23:56. We're not going to read it all. But here's what's going on. Journey with me in it as if you're hearing this perhaps for the first time. Jesus, all background, we've heard it all. He's been preaching, teaching, etc. This is now post-arrest, so the betrayal has happened, and Jesus is now on trial. And he's on trial, firstly, with the elders. There are a few trials going on first. This is the religious one. He's in front of the elders, and they're really upset. They've been plotting to do away with him for quite a while now. But they're really upset because he's claiming, or others are claiming, that he is the promised Messiah. And even more than that, there have been hints of claiming divinity sown all the way through there. So they ask him directly in this trial, tell us, if you're the Messiah, tell us. And he said, well, you wouldn't believe it if I answer you. Which just sort of gives away the answer, right? I mean, they would believe it if he said, no, I'm not. But he said, you wouldn't believe it if I answer you, but they push him. Are you the Son of God? Well, you say it. You've said that. And that was enough for them. Like, they just go like ape all over that. Like blasphemy. Absolute blasphemy. That's enough. Shift him off to the Roman authorities. Now, that's pretty important to note, by the way, because, excuse me, while the Jews wanted to get rid of him, they didn't have the authority to actually give a death sentence. That was for the real legal authority in the place, which was the Romans. So they shuffled him off to Pilate, but then they had to sort of adjust their charges a little bit to make it something that Pilate would actually convict him of. And so they said stuff like, well, this guy's trying to subvert the nation. He's opposing Caesar, who is the only true king. He claims he's the king. And so Pilate says, so are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus gives his now very frustrating answer. Well, you've said it. So there's a bit of backwards and forwards, and Pilate just goes, I've got nothing here. Like, there's nothing that I can actually charge him with, really. So no charge. There's nothing that I can do. And the religious leaders, they dig in deeper and they give more accusations. And he's a stirrer from Galilee. Now, when Pilate heard that he was from Galilee, which was a region up north, he knew that Herod, who was the boss of Galilee, was actually in town. So he said, oh, great, send him off to Herod. So Herod was actually a Jew, or related as such. So he was really excited when Jesus came in because he'd heard a lot about him. Thank you, sir. I will need that in a minute. He'd heard a lot about him. He had lots of questions. And he plied Jesus with all these questions, and Jesus just basically didn't say anything. The leaders had all these extra accusations, and Jesus remained silent. And so Herod decided that what he'd do about this he would dress him up. He would mock him. His frustrations came out in making him look like the king that the people thought he was trying to be. By the way, Jesus was never trying to be the sort of king in a political sense that would have got him in trouble the way that the Jewish leaders were painting him to be. This was a trumped up charge. This was fake news. This was a false thing. It's interesting at the moment, I confess to being far too addicted to American news. But even more recently, even as much as this morning, I'm looking at some YouTube clips of what's going on with the legal challenges that the Republicans are giving now that they've apparently lost the election. But they're saying they're not. But what they're doing is really interesting. They're gathering all of these affidavits, so there's legally sworn statements from anyone who wants to say anything that's against what happened. I heard so-and-so, they say this, and so they'll sign it and they'll say, yes, this is what I believe. So basically then they say, so prove that it's not true. You know, that's not how the legal systems work, does it? Like, you don't, like, imagine that. You go, I saw an alien. Prove that I didn't. Oh, well, it must have happened then. That's not how it works. Like, you're meant to prove that something did happen, not have a burden of proof in a court to prove that that didn't happen. And so these cases are being thrown out all over the place because that's not how it works. And here, they're actually creating this false narrative. And yet, in this legal system, it ends up not going Jesus' way. Pilate said, Herod and I have got no reason to convict this guy because Jesus had gone back to Herod because Herod had shuffled him off. We've got nothing. We can't do it. But the crowd call out for Barabbas to be released. Release this murderer. This is a guy, they did have proof that this guy was really the criminal that had been, the reason why he had been arrested was real. Pilate said, no, I'm not going to do that. But the crowd said, crucify him, hang him up, execute him. And so Pilate, in a whole washing his hands thing, in other words, I'm tapping out, released Barabbas and ordered that Jesus be crucified. Unjust, unfair, a court ruling against Jesus because of lies and falsehoods. And there was Jesus nailed to the cross. And he says, opens his mouth. You can imagine people leaning in going, he's going to say something. He stayed silent all that time. Now he's going to say something. Up on the cross, nailed to the cross. Here he goes. Surely he's going to give it to his false accusers and give it to those who have been perpetrators of this injustice. And he says, hey, God, forgive them. Plot twist. Isn't that plot twist? It's not what we expected, right? This unexpected forgiveness, really unwarranted forgiveness in the face of those who have been deliberately looking to incriminate Jesus in falsehood. And in the midst of being a victim of that, in the midst of the pain and the suffering and the shame, Jesus thinks of the other and says, Father, forgive them. Plot twist. But if you want to know what God's heart is, look at Jesus. Unexpected forgiveness. Forgiveness is powerful, right? Don't miss this. Don't just miss this because it's an important plot twist in the story of Jesus. Because you miss this, you miss Jesus' heart, you miss God's character. But don't miss the power of forgiveness in our lives and in our experience. Like Corrie ten Boom. You may or may not know her story. She was a person who was in a concentration camp in World War II. And she was treated terribly by the Nazi officers. And her sister, as a result, was killed. And while she actually made it through to the end, she was angry and she was damaged and traumatized. And yet she, as a believer and a follower of Jesus, was confronted with this idea of forgiveness. And she would talk at rallies and at church services after that. And after one of those church services, a man walked up to talk to her after she'd spoken. And she recognised this guy. And with tremor coming all over her, she realised it was one of the guards at the concentration camp who was coming up to see her, who mentioned to her how much her message of forgiveness had impacted him and held out his hand to shake hers. How would you be? What would you expect to be? How would you respond? Thinking of her sister Betsy and all that had happened and all the crimes and all the people she'd seen murdered and tortured. And yet this guy holds out his hand in a request for forgiveness. And she recounts afterwards, it took her every force of will to put out her hand and shake his. She said it didn't come naturally at all. But the power of that moment transformed many people's lives. Forgiveness, not easy, not automatic, not straightforward, but don't miss the plot twist of forgiveness. It's powerful. Powerful in the life of Jesus and all that meant. And so the story goes on. And the story goes on, Jesus is there and Pilate orders that a sign be put on the top of the cross, which wasn't unusual because often to be able to tell the people who are passing by the sort of crimes that they should not commit, otherwise what would be happening to them. They put signs up, and Pilate ordered that the sign be put up above Jesus on the cross, the King of the Jews. Plot twist, actually, certainly for the religious leaders, even though they had concocted this idea that he was going to be a king to replace Caesar, which was not true. They sort of freaked out and went back to Pilate and said, could you take that down and at least put something up that says, oh, Jesus said he was the King of the Jews, because he's not actually the King of the Jews, so please change the sign. And he went, no, I'm leaving that. I have written what I've written. Imagine the power of those who are Jews, who've engineered and plotted this man's death, and they have killed the King of the Jews. Regicide. They have ignored, denied, put aside, and done away with the king. By the way, that's a temptation for all of us, I think me included. Even though I'm a follower of the king and I declare that, there are times I recognise where I go, that's a little inconvenient, that thing that Jesus talks about quite clearly. That's actually uncomfortable for me to follow that rather clear teaching. I'm going to put that aside because I'm going to reinterpret that, or just innocently wrap it up and put it out of reach. And yet, here is Jesus the King. Plot twist number 2. Freeman, plot twist number 2. The unconventional king. The king. We can ignore the king at our own peril, and certainly at the peril of the life that we could have if we followed the one who is the forgiver, the one who's living out his words of love your neighbour, love your enemy, love the stranger, therefore forgive those who are right in the middle of doing the act that is so horrendous, and then does that from the authority of being a king. Well, the story goes on. It goes on into the thing that just stuns me every time I hear it. I think the most powerful part of this story, where Jesus dies, he breathes his last. There's whole lots of stuff going on. But at that very moment, the passage tells us, in the middle of the temple, the curtain rips. Plot twist 3. Now, we don't get the plot twist as much as a Jew would reading this or experiencing it at the time. But, man, this is important. This is momentous. The Holy of Holies was a section that was cut off by this heavy curtain. Was it, in the Old Testament scheme of things, was where you would only go once a year, and only if you were the chief priest, and only with a rope around your leg in case you died in there and they could pull you out, because, it was holy, God's presence, right? And so that was a symbol of, while the temple was amongst the people, God was sort of there, but he was still far away. He was still not very accessible, but God's heart was always for us to have full accessibility and full welcome. And so plot twist number 3 is this unbelievable welcome as the curtain into the place that symbolically was God's throne room is ripped apart so that we can enter in, and he is able to journey with us at all places, in all times. It's just incredible. Don't miss these plot twists. That in the middle of the plot twists for you, whatever they may be in your life, be they now, be they next year, be they because of 2020, be they grief or anxiety or uncertainty, that because the curtain is now open, God is able to be with us and journey with us as the King, who is the one leading the way through forgiveness and love and grace in all that we do. The King on the cross, expressing forgiveness and dying so forgiveness is sure and be able to be embraced, because there is now nothing standing between our Creator and us. Wow, pay attention to the plot twists. 2020 is a plot twist. One of our family favourite shows is the IT Crowd. And I don't know if you know the IT Crowd at all. It's a number of years old, probably about 10 years old or so. And it's about this IT department that's in the basement, because that's where all IT departments deserve to be, of this big office block in London. And Roy is one of the people in the IT department. And as people ring him to say, can you fix my computer? Especially as the series goes on, he picks up the phone after it rings and he says, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" and just hangs up. That's about it. That's the sum total of most of his IT advice, because after all, that does actually fix most computer problems, right? Just turn it off and on again. And I can't help but wonder whether God this year has looked at us as Christians and maybe to the church and said, we're going to try turning it off and on again. Here's a bit of a reboot, right? I know this is traumatic and difficult, but a plot twist has a point, even in the drama and danger and difficulties that they often express. They twist the story in such a way that good comes out in the end. Well, at least in most of the movies that I like to watch, and in unexpected ways. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Have you tried facing this year and next year with a spiritual reboot, with an opportunity to embrace the Jesus who is the Jesus of forgiveness, grace and love, who is the King who should not be put aside, but is the King who is God in human flesh, God now with us, and with us in a permanent way, because there is now no barrier between us and God through the death and resurrection of Jesus. On the day before Greg died, he gave a devotion at his school. And Gemma wasn't actually there, but some students came wide-eyed and mouths open to tell her what he talked about. And they were stunned because they said, it was a bit off the cuff, but he was talking about the sort of things that are important in life. Like, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to invest in? What's going to make a difference? What can you do to transform your life and the world around you just a little bit even, for yourself and for others? What's going to be a valuable contribution you can make? And he said, you know what I look forward to? He said to his students, or all the students that were gathered there, I look forward hopefully to one day getting to heaven and talking to God, and God says, well done, good and faithful servant. Well done for all that you've done. Thank you. The next night, he was gone. The next night, he was experiencing that sort of thing. Now, not that his good deeds were being weighed up in a sense of whether he could get in or not. He was a follower of Jesus. Jesus had opened up that curtain. There was full and free access to God. There was forgiveness in the whole system. That's the whole point of that story. But the point of that story too is not just to know it and think it, but to live it out. And Greg knew that. And maybe he has heard those words just 24 or so hours after he said them to his students. What a powerful message for them. What a powerful example for us to embrace this unexpected forgiveness, this unconventional King, and this unbelievable welcome. No matter what plot twists come our way, God is faithful, God is strong, God is, what's today's word? In what? Immutable? Immutable. He doesn't change. He doesn't change. When the world around us changed and our world is full of plot twists, God is actually on the throne and wanting to journey with us through those things for the good of us and for others around us and for his kingdom. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for the reality of your kingdom, the reality of who you are, for the unexpected forgiveness, for you as the King, and for the unbelievable welcome that you've given to us. May we not take it for granted. May we follow you in all that means. But may we embrace the goodness of that, the grace, the love, the mercy, the encouragement, the companionship through all of life's difficulties, so that we can actually take the blessing of that and bless others, those around about us who we know and love, those who are strangers, and even those who are enemies, because that's your way. That's the way you've shown us. That's the character of our God. And so challenge us to be people who embrace what you've done for us, not set you aside, but follow you in ways of gratitude because of who you are and what you've done for us. We commit ourselves to you in that way in Jesus' name. Amen.